Hyundai might not have a direct rival to the Toyota RAV4 hybrid in Australia, but it will soon have something far more exciting, leapfrogging the idea of a petrol-electric powertrain completely with this, the very cool and all-electric Ioniq 5. Yes, Toyota might be the king of hybrids in Australia, but Hyundai wants to be the emperor of electric, and it's this car that they hope will get them there. Hyundai openly describes this as the most exciting, game-changing vehicle it's ever launched in Australia, and at a glance, you can kind of see where they're coming from. Funky, aggressive design, super clever tech and guilt-free driving should make the Ioniq 5 a pretty compelling proposition. But there have been cars that have promised plenty and actually delivered little. And since we're right here and it's right there, we should probably take a closer look, right? But first, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe to stay on top of all of our videos and jump over to carsguide.com.au for the full skinny on thousands of new cars. Right, let's get stuck in. The Ioniq 5 is a mid-size SUV, think RAV4 or Mazda CX-5, that will touch down in Australia in Q3 this year. And when it does, it could well be the most exciting EV in the country. There's its looks, of course, but there's also plenty of substance to the style. Unlike the Kona EV, for example, the Ioniq 5 is built on a dedicated EV platform, the EGMP, or Electric Global Modular Platform. That means Hyundai was in charge of its dimensions and wheelbase from the outset, rather than trying to retrofit an EV solution to an existing platform. Which is why the Ioniq 5 serves up mid-size SUV dimensions of around 4.6 metres in length, 1.9 metres in width, and 1.6 metres in height, but it does it while riding on a massive 3-metre wheelbase, which is actually longer than the Palisade SUV. Hyundai says the move creates extra interior space, promising this Ioniq 5 delivers as much room for passengers and cargo as a vehicle one segment up. But there's another fairly obvious perk too. And that is, of course, its looks. Now, not only do these alloys look like something you might see in a Saw movie, but they've also been pushed to the furthest corners of the car, making the Ioniq 5 sporty to look at, and we hope sporty to drive. Now, a bit like the gorgeous Honda E, we reckon Hyundai has really nailed a retro design brief here. But while the Japanese EV feels a bit more cutesy, this one definitely has a hint of aggression about it. It's not just the saw blade alloys, but the flying V shape of the front end and the general squared off, boxy dimensions of the entire vehicle. These flaps down here, by the way, are closed now, but they'll open when they need to aid battery cooling and then close again for better aerodynamics. But I particularly love the way light has been used here. There's that LED strip up front, which certainly draws your eye, but I really love the squared off headlights up there, and back here, these squared off rear and brake lights. In fact, this looks like an old Tetris screen, doesn't it? It's a little bit retro, a little bit modern, and in my opinion, a whole lot of cool. Now, speaking of lights, when you plug in to charge, which you do where the old fuel flap used to be, you'll find more squared off lights telling you how much charge you've taken on. In fact, let's talk about charging for a minute. The Ioniq 5 can support a 400 volt or, like the Porsche Taycan, an 800 volt charging infrastructure, and Hyundai says that when plugged into a 350 kilowatt fast charger, it will go from 10% to 80% charged in just 18 minutes. And if you're in even more of a hurry, Hyundai reckons you can take on 100 kilometers in range in just 5 minutes. Those are peak charging times, of course, and things will take considerably longer when plugged in at home or into a lower capacity charger. The Ioniq 5 is also available with two battery types, a standard range 58 kilowatt hour battery and an extended range 72.6 kilowatt hour battery, with the latter producing a driving range of around 480 kilometers in its two-wheel drive guise. Internationally, you can even fit solar panels to the roof, but to be honest, it doesn't add much in the way of driving range, and the tech is yet to be confirmed for Australia. Also very cool is the V2L or vehicle to load system. There's a plug inside the cabin and outside the car, and it will deliver 3.6 kilowatts of power. So if you're camping, for example, you can use it to charge or power something or recharge a scooter for your final mile commute, all using the car's battery. Climb into the cabin and you're met by a tech-friendly yet refreshingly uncluttered space. These twin 12.3-inch screens control pretty much everything, and they're not that uncommon. But what's less common is the fact that all your critical controls, including the gear selector, has been moved to the dash, ensuring that what Hyundai calls its lounge feel of the cabin feels even less cluttered. Now, all the materials are eco-friendly, all your tech stuff's on point, and it feels airy and spacious, but there are a couple of pretty cool party tricks that I like. So for one, the center console slides forward or back 140mm, so you can prioritize space where you need it. The glove box holds a huge 9.4 litres, but it opens like a drawer to make loading and unloading even easier. But my favorite feature is what Hyundai calls its relaxation seats. So yes, this is an electric vehicle, and of course you are going to be spending at least some time waiting for it to charge. And if you're waiting, you may as well do it in comfort. So to do that, you hit this button here and you let Hyundai's relaxation seats take over, putting you in a zero gravity position so you can relax, unwind, and wait for the charging to be done. And for more comfort, unveil the huge glass roof and watch the world drift by for a moment. Let's cover off luggage space quickly because the numbers are pretty impressive. Now in here you'll find 531 litres of space with the rear seats in place, but that grows to 1,591 litres with them folded flat. Now also very clever is the storage space up front, which is used predominantly to store the charger, which means it never has to take up room here in the boot. Right, let's talk power. In Australia, the standard range 58 kilowatt hour battery pairs with a rear wheel motor and will produce 125 kilowatts and 350 newton meters. That's enough, Hyundai says, to clip 100 kilometers an hour in 8.5 seconds. The bigger 72.6 kilowatt hour battery gives you the choice of rear motor only or front and rear motor and all-wheel drive. In rear drive format, that means 160 kilowatts and 350 newton meters and a sprint to 100 kilometers an hour in 7.4 seconds. In all-wheel drive mode, those numbers increase to 225 kilowatts and 605 newton meters and a sprint to 100 kilometers an hour in 5.2 seconds. So when will we get it? Well, Hyundai says the Ioniq 5 should touch down here in Q3 this year, and while they haven't confirmed pricing, you can pretty safely expect it to start in the mid to high 60s. That should make it pretty compelling. Now remember, this is all just look and feel. We haven't actually driven it yet, so we can't tell you what it's like to live with. For that, you'll have to keep an eye on carsguide.com.au. Speaking of which, have you subscribed yet? If you haven't, you'll miss something, and there will be a test